Let's kick off this hour with a sensational story on Shri Satya Sai Baba. This will be hosted here by a close friend of mine, Nalini Bhat, who brings this programming from out of town. Come close, let's join her.
Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. Love is my form, truth is my
We at Prashanti offer our humblest pranams at the most sacred lotus feet of Bhagawan Shri Satya Sai Baba. Welcome brothers and sisters, this is Nalini. We watched the Gopi Brigade, a group of Western women who had the great good fortune of experiencing Baba from close quarters. They regaled us with fun stories of Baba's Leelas. Throughout this month, let us soak in the bliss of listening to the Sai Hippies, as Baba nicknamed them, a group of hippies who enjoyed real close proximity with Shri Baba in the 70s. Let us watch clips from a reunion these men had in Montana.
We're having a reunion of the class of 1970 and 71. To my far left is Bruce Bradbury, and Wendell Field, Robert Congar, Martin Stamp. We had a lot of good times and hard times too. Bruce, you wrote Love Is My Form, which Swami's adopted as his theme song.
We were in an interview and he happened to say that. One of us wrote it down. We sang bhajans, which split into harmonies that didn't work. I was back a couple of years ago and he sang it and the tune's been changed. It's been cleaned up. And in '69 I was living in a cave. I came across some article about Sai Baba healing people and I was fascinated by it. I took off for India. After about 6 months, I took off to Ceylon. On the boat to Ceylon, I saw this man who glowed. We docked in Ceylon, was down in a tiny town when a man came up to me and said, "Come stay in my house." And I went to this man's cottage, and in his living room was the guy who glowed. I said, "Why do you glow?" He said, "I just saw someone who changed my life. His name's Satya Sai Baba." I just got up the next day and went to puja parties.
He was very motherly and like a child. He always loved to have things happen in a game. Well, I actually lived in his house. Adjaretti, his personal attendant, didn't seem to know any more about him than anyone else. He was around him all day. You never met anyone immediately closer to you. He was your best friend, mother, father. At the same time, he seemed like maybe he's not exactly human. One time they were talking about going somewhere. He said, "I'm getting the car." I did. He said, "Where's your luggage?" And I said, "I didn't bring any luggage." And he said, "Oh," mumbling, "ready-made clothes and toothbrush and blah, blah, blah." We're looking for a big pile of sand to have a picnic. Richard Bach filmed this. There were just 8 people. He pulled things out of the sand. A crystal necklace, which was in the full moon, was like real spectacular. And within 20 minutes, there were 300 people. He could not be somewhere. He would show up, no one knew what he was doing, and immediately there were 500 people. Minor miracles of Sai Baba. He can trip over his own clothes. Yes. This thing hanging around, you take 5 steps and, the fact that the vibhuti doesn't fall to the ground, What he's saying is one thing, but what's actually happening is like hitting you on several different levels. He looked off in space and said, "You don't even care." It was like a knife. I was supposed to do these paintings and went up and painted. Someone took my red paint, put dots or what. I would come up there once a week. He sat with me for like 15 minutes to talk to me one time. I asked him if he was coming to the United States. He said, "Clean up your own house before you go next door." I asked him if he's going to have gray hair. He glowed blue. A guy with a blue light with white hair and an orange robe, I thought it was hard to relate to him on some levels as a human already. This was like a little too much. He said, "Oh, what can I do?"
I went to India, got more attracted to the Hindu ideas. One day I went into a temple and there's this big picture of amazing hair. And I said, "Who's that?" They said, "Sai Baba, he's really fantastic." 3 months later I got to the ashram. He walks across the veranda as he goes to his breakfast. And he looked down at me and said, "What took you so long?" I went into the interview room. Rest is history. What I really liked was Sai Baba, the way we got hysterical together, and the way Baba would pull us up and lop us off. If we didn't learn the first time, of course not.
It was like looking into eternity. I knew that he knew me. He walked up to me, whispered in this ear, "Tomorrow." The man who was sitting next to me said, "Oh, tomorrow Baba will give you an interview." The next day, no interview. Went back to the house where I had a picture of Baba. The sun made a ray of light and made a circle in the bottom of the picture. And I started looking in the circle of light, and I began to see things. Mountains, never seen them this lifetime. River, sandbanks. I saw this little speck in the ocean, and I could see two people. It was my mom and my dad in their fishing boat. The second time Baba said tomorrow, I was trying to really meditate, and I began to get pain. All of a sudden, the pain turned to the sweetest pleasure you can imagine. Third time he said tomorrow, I saw many arms coming out of his body, eyes between his fingers looking out. I thought he wants us to be his hands and his eyes. Soldiers in fighting the war against unrighteousness. Engineers in building the bridge to God. Fourth time Baba said tomorrow. Heard about a woman saint. Every night she would walk among these wild animals and pet them and talk to them. And that's been a dream that since I was a kid. I really wanted that experience. And I was in Baba's garden. I lay down to take my nap. I felt something pick up one of my feet and put it on its side, and then put it down very gently. So it was actually more comfortable for my sleep, gentle as a baby. Then something began to clean the bottom of my feet, and I knew, monkey. And then another one climbed on my back and did the back of my hair. A little monkey came up and he kissed me on the cheek. Baba showed me his power. He showed me that he knew that I really wanted to experience that.
Thank you for watching Prashanti. Jai Sai Ram.
Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food.
We at Prashanti offer our humblest pranams at the most sacred lotus feet of Bhagawan Shri Satya Sai Baba. Welcome brothers and sisters, this is Nalini. In the 70s, a group of young men who Baba nicknamed rowdies and Sai Hippies came into Shri Baba's fold. They were uniquely blessed to live in the ashram for lengthy periods of time. In 1996, they had a reunion in Montana, and last week on Prashanti, we delighted ourselves with Swami's stories as recalled by these men. Today, a devotee, Howard Levin, narrates his anguishes at obtaining a visa to stay in India. The story is hilarious. Let us watch.
Christmas Day of 1971, the day that he resurrected Walter Cohn, we had an interview. I had problems with my visa. Swami said that we traveled all over India and you had no proper address. Now always give my address and you'll never have any more difficulties. So I said, but Swami, if I give your address, they'll ask for a letter from you. He said, yes, I'll give. I wanted to stay there the rest of my life. One day the police came knocking at my door. They had this notice from New Delhi. It was in English and they couldn't read it. It was about me. And they asked me to read it to them to come down to the police station. Well, it was a warning circular from the government of India. It said I was suspected of being a CIA agent, that they should watch my whereabouts. So here I am in the police station reading this warning circular, which is instructing the police to secretly watch me. Actually, I didn't think it was very funny. And they said, well, what does it say? And I said, well, they're sort of suspicious of me. I said, oh, no problem, Mr. Howard. We know you. You're here for so many days. I was totally hysterical. And I ran over to the bungalow at Whitefield. And I was like, Swami, and he put his arm around me. It was really sweet. He said, what's the matter, sir? And I said, Swami, government of India thinks I'm a spy. He said, don't worry. And I said, Swami, I need a letter for my visa. And he said, what can I do, sir? Indira Gandhi and Nixon, too much fighting. He says, then go to America. So I got on my hands and knees and I said, please don't send me to America. Please give me a letter. I never give any letters. I said, please, Swami. Then he lifted me up and he said, no, only some joke. He says, I don't give the letters. Kasturi gives the letters.
Kasturi was the translator and grandmother. Was
Our mother-in-law.
My mother-in-law.
So he told me, go to Puda Party and tell Kasturi to give you a letter. I'll telephone him. He said, good. I took Namaskar, bought the afternoon SRS bus, 8.5 hours to Puda Party, and there's a power failure. I groped my way through the dark. I find Mr. Kasturi hunched over a typewriter with a candle. Mr. Kasturi, you have to give me a letter for my visa. And he says, Swami said, I said, well, Swami hasn't communicated anything to me. I was so hysterical that he said that he would write this letter. And he said, well, what should I say? So I told him to write like character reference, like they knew me. I wasn't a spy. He said, I'll write the letter. You give it to Swami. If Swami approves it, he'll give it back. Next morning, back on that SRS bus, 8.5 hours to Whitefield. Swami's already gone for the Joy Ice Cream Factory. I figured I'd wait outside and try to give Swami the letter. The son of Mr. Java, who owned the factory, drove up, stopped his car, and he said, are you going to the ice cream factory? And I said, yes. He said, come with me. And he drove me right in the gate, sat me down. Swami came out and sat on this throne, looks at me, and he goes like this. writes in his hand, makes a sign like, did you get the letter? So I point to my pocket and show him the letter, and he goes, I know blessings. So I just assumed the letter was approved, and I went off to the Deputy Superintendent of Police, and I showed the letter. I had this funny feeling that maybe I shouldn't give it to him. I said, but I can't give it just now. I said, I feel like maybe I should make sure Sai Baba approves of this letter. He said, well, if you're going to do that, make 2 photostat copies. Now, I went, made the photostatic copies, and went back to Whitefield. Swami is now getting in his car to leave for Puja party. And I'm following Swami, saying, Swami, what about this letter? And he's going like this. He doesn't even look at me. I say, well, what should I do with it? And he says, you keep it. I didn't feel good about it. What I found out later is that he said, how can Kasturi give that man a letter without my permission? Phone the ashram and tell Kasturi to leave. I don't want to see him there. Luckily, the phone was out, but I didn't know all this. So I get back on that SRS bus. 8.5 hours to the party in hot pursuit. Now Kasturi's waiting. He's just really upset. And he says, where's that letter? Swami's really angry with me. I don't know why I listened to you. Give me back that letter. I didn't want to tell him that I had made 2 copies because I gave him the original and I stuck the 2 copies in my trunk. The DSP's office gave me a 3-month extension because they wanted to watch me. So I had to be there to watch. At the end of the 3 months, I thought, since Swami had promised me the letter, I would try again. Swami was just ignoring me. They were building the new canteen. So I went in the afternoon and I hid in there because I knew he was going to come on an inspection tour. And I could see through the crack. He came through the door, and I jumped out at him from behind the door, and I said, Swami, and he's looking up at the ceiling, and he's going like this, and I said it louder, Swami. And then finally I said, Mother, I need a letter for my visa. He said, go tell Kasturi. I said, but Swami, last time you yelled at him. And he pulled his hair like this. He wrote, and he said, oh, then I will tell you. That night he called Kasturi. He told him, don't recommend that man. He's completely crazy. Mr. Kasturi came and told me that, I just wanted to stay at his lotus feet forever. I was just so intoxicated with Swami. And he was the most beautiful, wonderful thing in the world. I just couldn't hear that.
We at Prashanti offer our humblest pranams at the most sacred lotus feet of Bhagawan Shri Satya Sai Baba. Welcome, brothers and sisters. This is Nalini. A group of young hippies who were destined to have close interaction with Baba in the 1970s had a reunion, and we have been regaling ourselves with fascinating stories about Baba. Today we bring you the last part of the series where a devotee, Howard Levin, talks about his struggle with obtaining a visa to stay with Baba for long periods in a very humorous way. Let us watch.
I just couldn't hear that it was like over. I went up on the hill and I was praying and crying. I was going through this whole catharsis, and suddenly a light went on in my head. And if I show him the copy of the letter, then he'll see that it's just a simple little letter. He can't possibly be mad. The very next day, I go down to my hiding place in the canteen. I hide behind the door. When Swami comes through, I jump out at him. Swami, this is the letter I need. He reads it and he said, where did you get this? And I said, Swami, this is a copy of that letter Mr. Kasturi. He says, no, this is illegal. He called Kasturi that night, scolded. He told Mr. Kasturi that I had probably making 20 forgeries of the letter to give to every foreigner so they could all get the visas, and that he had to go confiscate all those forgeries. So Mr. Kasturi comes to this shed. He wants the forgeries. And he took the letters. I wrote Swami a long letter of apology, and the next day Swami gave out the booty to everybody. Somehow he managed to skip me. I just realized that I had to go. So I went back to the DSP and I said, well, I have to leave. He says, why don't you go to New Delhi and try? I get on a plane, get to New Delhi, and I decided I'd go to the center with the vice president of the organization in Delhi. So I told him the story. I needed a letter. So he connected with this lobbyist, and he took me to this restricted military base to give a letter asking Indira Gandhi herself to recommend me for a visa. Because Indira Gandhi's secretary was going to take off from this military place in the papers for Mrs. Gandhi to sign. And then he said, we'll give you a letter and they'll take it. So I closed my eyes. Here they are accusing me of being a spy, but they're taking me in a chauffeured car to the restricted military base. So I'm giving the letter to Mrs. Gandhi's secretary. And I said, you mean that they're going to fly my letter especially in a helicopter to Mrs. Gandhi? And he said, no, silly boy, just doing it as a favor. The police in Delhi gave me till midnight to hear from Mrs. Gandhi. They had my ticket booked, the escort all set up. They were going to take me to the airport. And Mrs. Gandhi replied that she didn't get involved. And they escorted me to the airport, put me on the Air India flight, made sure I had a seat. And they shut the door and got me out of India. So 20 hours later, I was in Manhattan. And so I lied and I cheated. And I opened Baba's mail. He forgave me.
I'll tell that one Ahimsa story. I opened the book of Baba's speeches. First thing I read was, if you take a leaf from a tree with no reason, it gives God pain. And so that made me all of a sudden feel responsible for the ants. But one day I was walking looking just for the ants. And Roger Reddy said, why are you walking like that? And I said, I'm trying not to kill the ants. He laughed and he said, God doesn't care about ants. The next day, we were in an interview with Baba, and he took this little ant off his shoulder, and I don't know if he materialized it or not. He bent down and he blew it on the ground, and he looked me in the eyes and he smiled.
How many years has it been since most of you have been back? And what is it that Swami did or said that sustained you?
He said he was my mother, father, and I feel that. In fact, I don't feel a necessary urge to be there. And he changed my life a lot. Sometimes he could come along and say something. 3 different people heard 3 different things, which each one of them was like a revelation to them.
It was painful to leave. I never felt the urge to go back. It made no sense to be running back to India, sitting in line looking at him. The job was to live a life. I did go back 4 years ago. The thing that struck me was Sai Baba was born in a very tiny village in Puttaparthi, unfertile and hot. When I went back, there were forests that had been planted, and the climate was changing. To see that on top of all the other things that he does on a personal level, that like he was working so ardently to recreate the health and beauty of the place where he was born. The breadth of vision, it was just absolutely astounding.
I was in India 15 years ago. I landed in Bombay. After a couple of days, I heard Sai Baba's coming. I go out to the center, I get off the bus, Sai Baba drives past in his car. I stand there. That is enough. I'd had a very intense experience. He was with me.
1979, I went back. I feel him in my life a lot, actually.
For me, it's been 10 years since I've been back. Everything's always been so fresh in my mind and very vivid.
She wants to be in the film.
So one time, somebody asked Swami why we had so many bad thoughts and doubts, and he said, the heart is like a garden. God's grace is like the rain. When it rains, not only do beautiful flowers, herbs, and fruits come in the garden, but also weeds come in. Weeds are like your bad thoughts and doubts, and you have to pull the weeds out with the discipline of your spiritual practice so that the flowers and the fruits of love and devotion may blossom. And I thought that was a very beautiful lesson.
Thank you for watching Prashanti. Jai Sai Ram.
Love is my God. Love is my form. Truth is my breath. Bliss is my food.
We at Prashanti offer our humblest pranams at the most sacred lotus feet of Bhagawan Shri Satya Sai Baba. Welcome, brothers and sisters. This is Nalini. We have been bringing Shri Baba's life in the decade from 1980 to 1990. This month on Prashanti, we move on to the decade 1990 to 2000. The decade was heralded by Shri Baba with the declaration that his intention was to start a super specialty hospital in Puttaparthi. The story of how the hospital was constructed in the shortest time of less than a year, how the hospital emerged from the will or the sankalpa of the Lord are the focus of Prashanti this month. The holy shrine that Baba gifted to the poor, the sick and the suffering is a grand testimony to Swami's lofty ideals, love all, serve all, and hands that serve are holier than the lips that pray. The hospital, with no cash counter, completely free, yet equipped with the best of the best doctors, state-of-the-art treatment, and a generous dose of love and care and affection, is nothing short of a miraculous temple of healing. The structure, looking as though two giant hands are embracing the people, speaks volume for the kind of treatment given here. The divine Dr. Baba himself oversaw the minutest of details. Who else but the Avatar could have conceived and executed such a task? Baba planted the seeds for the super specialty hospital during his birthday discourse on November 23, 1990. His announcement that the hospital will be up and running by his next birthday on November 23, 1991 was incredulous to say the least. People did not realize that this seed would grow into a huge tree as though touched by a magic wand. Let us watch.
This is the temple of healing, made of love of God, made by the will of God. This is the temple of healing, filled with joy and hope. My story began 23 years ago. I emerged from God's eternal spring of divine love that drenches the entire humanity. I am His creation. This is my story.
On November 23, 1990, thousands of devotees gathered to celebrate the 65th birthday of Bhagawan Shri Satya Sai Baba. During his birthday discourse, Sai Baba announced the beginnings of the super specialty hospital to be built to serve mankind, especially the poor.
With these noble and lofty ideals in view, we have started a big hospital. It is difficult to come across a person who melts looking at the poor. Whether it is bypass surgery with reference to heart, kidneys, we have decided to make it free.
Such a short time to plan, construct, and staff the super specialty hospital, tremendous efforts had to be made in many areas. 150 acres of land was purchased near Puttaparthi.
Critchlow was the world's leading sacred architect. He has been put in charge of Director of Studies of to Prince Charles. Keith was divinely inspired. A mandala is a sort of symbol that represents a vortex. The land had to be prepared with this ancient mandala being drawn out. This mandala is supposed to also have a symbol attached to it, which must be an eagle, either sitting on the property or flying above. We thought, well, how would this be possible? When we arrived at the hospital location, there were 5 eagles sitting on the ground in the exact spot where this ancient mandala was eventually drawn.
Isaac Tigert said to me, would you like to come to India to meet a holy man who wants a hospital building? I said, well, maybe. So put it mildly, it's just an incredible experience coming to meet Baba. Had a long session with him, maybe 3 hours a day for 6 days in a row, and he just patted me on the shoulder at the end of the week and said, you design it as you like. We had 1 year to build this huge hospital in. I went back to London and we gathered 17 people together. We worked 17 hours a day for 3 months and produced a set of documents covering every aspect of the hospital, and within 7 months they built a building that would take us 7 years in the UK. We had built the second largest hospital in Asia. And we've got the best equipment in the world here, and they are giving everything free. Nothing adds up to any calculation anybody could make in the West. The design, it came out of my hand in about an hour. What you can see, I drew from one end of the paper to the other on a big piece of paper this big, and almost exactly what's there. Swami said, 1,000-year project. And I tell you, that gives you an incredible sense of responsibility. There it is. If I come back in 1,000 years, I hope it'll still be there. And the building comes and embraces you. And the big dome is Swami's heart.
Jai Sai Ram.
Love is my God.
We at Prashanti offer our humblest pranams at the most sacred lotus feet of Bhagawan Shri Satya Sai Baba. Welcome, brothers and sisters. This is Nalini. Previously on Prashanti, we saw how Shri Baba, with his indomitable will or sankalpa, had declared that a super specialty high-tech hospital would be built within a year. Let us watch how the preparations were made for a seemingly impossible mission.
Sort of made a pact with him and set up a foundation, which I didn't have any money to put in at the time, but put in shares in my business and said that if I was blessed to make some money out of this crazy business of rock and roll, offer it to Sai Baba as a form of turning this cash into something good. I was always worried about how good the hard rock really was in terms of spirituality. Over the years, he has been kind enough to tell me that the hard rock was an oasis of light in a sea of darkness. So when I sold my business, I came here to Puttaparthi and told Sai Baba that I had this stash of cash and what should we do with it, and he said we will build a hospital.
The cost of the first stage of this hospital is 105 crores, and the estimated cost of running this hospital every month will be about 1.5 crores.
Sai Baba suddenly announced the hospital and said 1 year from today it will open. The experts all said that's impossible. It will take us a year just to plan this hospital. Through Swami's grace, we got the medical planning done in about 6 weeks. In fact, there were 100 draftsmen who were working on the projects and about half a dozen medical planners who were going over the actual plans. And I'm sure it was divinely inspired. The first basic layout drawings were brought to Satya Sai Baba 6 weeks after we began the project. The interesting thing was his amazing knowledge of the plan, and every small little detail he was interested in and had tremendous comments about and made many changes in the medical plan.
Indeed, it wasn't designed to be as big as it has become. Sai made it very clear at the beginning that he wanted it to be concerned with the heart, lung, brain and kidney, that those would be the 4 specialisms. But it was designed as a 100-bed facility. The splendid building, which is the main hospital building, is actually only part of this great 100-acre campus, but it's the most dominant building. That was designed as a single-story building, and they'd been on site for a couple of months when it was decided to make it into a 2-story building. So it mushroomed.
Finally, what makes a hospital is not just the equipment, not just the facilities, but the people and the personnel. We have in place a dedicated team of doctors, nurses and medical technicians, all vying with each other to do service at the lotus feet of our Bhagawan Baba.
Swami told us, the selection panel, that you don't go by the devotion to Swami. He must be really good in his job. Swami wants a good man and a good doctor. So that's the criterion here, that's nothing else.
Last year, exactly this date, there was nothing but wilderness here. And no human being must have crossed this tract of land. During the course of last 1 year, hectic activity started, about 2,500 people working round the clock.
I was out there on hospital sites every day for 6 weeks before the opening. Each day it grew. When I arrived there, there were 1,008 people on site. During the last few days, there were 3,000 people. And it was wonderful to see all the college boys and college girls. It was their vacation time, when normally they go home to see their families. They'd all decided to stay, and they came out every day in the bus and were moving bricks and shifting turf and joining in. It was frantic. I mean, working 24 hours a day with floodlights. It was the monsoon weather. There was a lot of mud. It happened also in the middle of the peanut harvest. All the villages and a lot of the labourers from the surrounding villages had their peanut harvest. So for 2 or 3 days there was hardly anybody out there on site. Here we were involved in this high-tech hospital with all the latest equipment, with a design, engineering, consultancy team which was multinational. The coordination between Delhi, Bangalore, New York, London that had gone on in the previous 9 months, all was thrown to the wind to get the peanuts in.
More next time. Thank you for watching Prashanti. Jai Sai Ram.
Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food. Love is my form, truth is my breath, bliss is my food.
We at Prashanti offer our humblest pranams at the most sacred lotus feet of Bhagawan Shri Satya Sai Baba. Welcome brothers and sisters, this is Nalini. We have watched with pure astonishment the story of how the super specialty hospital came into being in the previous Prashantis. We bring you the concluding part today with the inauguration of the Temple of Healing by the then Prime Minister of India, Shri Narasimha Rao, and Shri Baba, felicitating the key people responsible for executing the divine intention. Let's watch.
November 22nd, Shri Satya Sai Baba arrived to inaugurate the site of the new hospital. Vedic mantras were chanted and bhajans were sung as Bhagavan Baba performed the traditional coconut breaking ceremony. Devotees from around the world came to attend this auspicious event. Bhagavan Shri Satya Sai Baba arrived to preside over the inauguration ceremonies. As preparations for the inauguration ceremonies were underway outside, preparations for the first surgeries were underway in the operating theaters. Sai Baba waited for the arrival of the Prime Minister of India, Shri Narasimha Rao.
Swami wanted 4 open heart surgeries to be done on the first day. So
here is an announcement. Within 15 minutes, doctors started the operation. It was a very complicated operation. Even such an operation has been successful and everybody is healthy and happy.
After operation, I am feeling all right. I like Baba very much.
Same machinery we use in US, or in fact even better, the cardiac catheterization lab has got the equipment better than the hospital I work in at California. Swami gets the best.
On November 23, 1991, thousands of devotees gathered at the Hillview Stadium to celebrate the 66th birthday.
Swami wanted 4 open heart surgeries to be done on the first day. So
as per his divine command, that hospital was inaugurated yesterday by the Honorable Prime Minister of India. Where else can such a miracle take place?
We have to inquire why Swami has started such a big hospital in this village, giving up a town or city where all comforts and wealthy people can spend money and get rid of their diseases anywhere. But poor people cannot give up their village and go far. This hospital was started keeping in view the welfare of such poor villagers.
June, July, August, September, October.
Within 5 months, a project of 5 years was completed. It is a very huge project. This project takes care of 1,000 years. Nobody need develop it further. Sai Great from New York has come to Puttaparthi to give in charity and help this cause. Swami blesses him that he develops more and more sense of sacrifice. This vessel, silver vessel, is a flower of love. This building plan and architecture was done by a British.
Buckingham Palace.
The model of this hospital is that of Buckingham Palace. Swami gives these blessings in the form of the silver vessel.
Dr. Venugopal.
Great love and affection, Dr. Venugopal has performed these operations.
Swami nourished me with his love and warmth. I took my first step, holding his hand, cheered and prodded by him. 23 years and a million emotions, from the fear to take the first step to the pride of standing tall on my feet. From the warmth of your touch to your distant, reassuring gaze, from the insouciance of my childhood to the responsibility of being an adult. I have seen them all, Swami.
As Baba declared, the hospital will be there for 1,000 years, broadcasting to the world Baba's ideals of love all, serve all, embracing the poor and the sick, healing them, nurturing them, and sending them home with a smile dancing on their lips. Thank you for watching Prashanti. Jai Sai Ram.